Now, throughout the session, you guys do have the option to ask questions, as I said. So there is the Q&A section. You can use the chat. If you want to raise your hand and prefer to ask your question, like verbally, and talk about it, I can give you the ability to speak as well. We'll give it a couple more minutes, see if anyone else does hop on. But I'm looking forward to seeing if there is anything that you guys may want some further information with respect to. And I always say any questions in here, everyone typically benefits from, right? So there's no question that isn't really going to not benefit somebody else that's viewing or even viewing this down in the future. So last session, what we did is we really focused on the importance of logging our calls, note-taking, and the dynamic filters in the system. So those are some of the things that I know Joseph, you've been with us for a while. I feel like Marty, you've been with us for a little while as well. But those are definitely a couple things that we really want to consider when we're working our database, is just making sure that we're logging and tracking our behaviors and activities so we know when to action those things again. If we're not tracking when we last did something, then we really don't know when we should be doing that again, right? So definitely going to have those leads slipping through the cracks. And then detailed notes really help you with maintaining that conversation down the road. So when we're reaching out to them for those follow-ups, your detailed notes definitely help with that as well. And for some of you, you may have these filters at the top here. You may have different filters that you're utilizing. All work just as well. It's really just, ensuring and helping you keep track of your behaviors and activities so you don't have to think about it. And that's where the call logging comes into play. Now, if you guys, so one of the things while I wait for you guys' questions, and I hope that you do have some, otherwise this will be a very, very quick, because I can ramble on about random things that I will kind of go over with you, and just some stuff that maybe you're aware of, maybe you're not, is related to your automated website. So when we go, and just an idea for yourself on what you can potentially be doing to help generate additional leads for yourself as well through the AgentLocator platform. Now, when you go into, so if you're on the automated system, which I believe both of you are, you're going to have that site manager that brings you into the back end of your website. Now, some may have just one website, some may have multiple websites. Essentially, you're just clicking the website that you're wanting to edit when you're going in the back end, or looking to, in this case, I'm going to show you how to drive leads or generate leads through the HomeLocator app itself. So if you want the listings going out from a specific website you have, you're going to select that specific website so that the listings are coming from that one there. Now, down at the bottom here, you do have your website settings section. When we go in there, you do have the HomeLocator. Okay, so the HomeLocator section here, this is just letting you know that the app is on. If for whatever reason you didn't want your app to be on and you don't want people using the app, you could turn it off. I'm not sure why you would do that, but everyone might have their own reasons behind it. Now, and as you guys may know, so if we go into the CRM system, generally speaking, when we have any lead that's in here in the back end, each lead typically has their own little unique app link, right? So if we were to send this link to this lead, when they sign up on the app, all their activity is going to be connected to their specific account. And this is also included in initial campaigns that your leads are being assigned to when they do sign up into your site. Now, if we go into the HomeLocator through the website settings, there is an advertised HomeLocator to people not inside your CRM. So what this is this app link is just, in more of a generic aspect connected to your website and the app. It's not connected to a specific user. So you can simply copy this link, and maybe you do print marketing and you're dropping off flyers and you have a specific domain that you use and you have this URL. For example, if someone types in www.locator.com, for example, it would, you'd forward it to this link. So it just opens up the app on their mobile device, for example. When they sign into that app, it'll automatically create the lead for you. So it's creating a new lead in your system based on them signing up through the app. So again, different ways that you could use this, print marketing, handing things out. You may have it as a hyperlink even in your email signature. You could also run a campaign on social media, for example, or try to get people on social media to download it. Again, anyone that is not a lead in your system, it'll create the lead in there. Now, because this is generic, if that lead already exists in your system, the system is going to recognize that through the lead's login details that they use on the app. So if they're using the same email, for example, that's already connected to the system, it's going to recognize that. It's not going to create another lead. It's just going to apply that, home locator to their existing account there. Now, another thing that you do have in the back end and with your website as well is the questionnaire, right? So the qualifying questionnaire. So this here is a little pop-up that appears when a lead signs up on your website. Now you have control over these, excuse me, and what this really does is it allows you to ask some questions to your lead, and you're going to be able to see how they answered those questions. Not only do you get emails about it in their account, but some of these questions automatically apply a tag to your lead in the back end. So you do have that ability to edit what it is, the questions that are being asked, and if there's any tags that would be associated with that questionnaire. So you can, of course, change what it says, the title and description when it does pop up. And then you also have this ability to allow them to close the questionnaire at registration, meaning we're not forcing them to answer this questionnaire. We want them to essentially be able to close it out. We don't want them to leave our website or get frustrated with us, but if they're willing to give us a little bit more information, we're happy to take it. So some of the questions that we currently have in here, and these again, you can change, add, remove. I wouldn't ask too many questions, right? We don't want to feel like if that person thinks that they have to answer all these questions, we definitely don't want them to feel like they're having to jump through hoops to get to those listed. Now, each one as well, you can make mandatory or non-mandatory. Again, we don't have them anything as mandatory right now. And so you do have that ability to ask questions. Now, when they answer, so you would give your answer in this case. Now, if somebody indicates that they're a first-time buyer, the system is going to recognize that and automatically throw the first-time buyer tag on that. If you're pre-approved for the mortgage, same idea. So here, if they, depending on how they answer that question, the appropriate tag is applied to that user. If they have a home to sell, again, if they do, they're going to be, with a tag on them indicating that they are a homeowner. And if they have a time frame for a purchase, this one here, basically the only time it adds a tag would be if they're 12 plus months. Now, these are existing tags that are in the system. You can definitely create your own tags, and you can use this as however you see fit. Especially with timelines, take it with a grain of salt. A lot of people just kind of put a number. Especially when they're just looking, or when the right property comes along. It's definitely, regardless, we're reaching out just to see what that actually means for that individual. Now, if you want to add a question, or let's say you changed one here, you wanted to remove it, you just click on Add a Question. And where did it go? So there we have the question here. So I'm just going to go, test question, just so you guys can see. And then you have the ability to choose, what it is. Maybe they need to multi-select. There's a date picker, things like that. If it's a multi-select, you're selecting, you're able to add the options below, and then they can select multiple. And so here, let's say option 1, for example. Now, if you're doing the single select, they're obviously just selecting one of those options. We're just going add option. So I'm just going to go option 2. Now, if we want a tag associated to that, we're just going to hit the little plus sign here, right? So if I wanted, address to be associated with option 1, and let's say I wanted this tag happy to be associated with option 2, then we can do that as well. Now, if we apply, so we can apply this. We also have the ability, so as you can see at the bottom there, we do when we make a change, we can preview what that is. So this is what the form looks like, and essentially the questions of how they would be, asked in the system, they go next, and so on. So we can demonstrate here just exactly how that works in the site. So now that I have this, questionnaire updated, I'm just going to go to the website here. And I'm just going to go look at a property on the website. I believe there should be some listings on here. So I'm just going to click on this one right here. Now I'm going to register on here as if I am a user. So I just have to create an email that doesn't already exist in here. And when we finish and view these photos, we're going to notice the pop-up it should appear unless I turn the forced registration off on here. And of course, it's going to make me a liar. Where's my pop-up? It's going to make me a liar on this one. Did we have it, and do we have the lead generation on? The only thing I can think of is I have an account in there already, and it's recognizing that account. That's the only thing I can think of as to why this one is not working that way. So let's go back, and I'm going to go back out of this here because it should have had that pop-up appear on here. And actually, the only thing I can think of is, you know what, I didn't save my changes. So I feel like that's probably what it is more than anything. So let me go back. That's a rule for all of us to kind of include in myself, is we have to make sure we save our changes. I am going to just refresh on here and create another account, and hopefully this time it works for us. All right, fingers crossed here that this time it works. There we go. So I didn't save my changes. So rule of thumb, make sure we're always saving our changes. So here's the question that does pop up. Again, I can close this out. And it will appear the next time they do log in as well. Just so you are aware, it's not a one-shot deal. It does try to get these questions answered again. So I'm just going to answer these so that you can see. Obviously, I'm not a first-time buyer and have a house to sell, typically anyway, but I'm just going to show you how this works based on this. So I'm just going to add option 1 here and then go done. Now, when we head back to the CRM system, so that original lead was created, when we go back and we see the next one, we're going to see all the tags that are now applied to this lead. So we're able to grasp and see that information right off the hop. And again, there's that one that we added where I selected the one, and this was the associated tag that would be applied to these individuals. Now, as we kind of head into the tags in the system, the tagging of your leads, some people refer to them as labels in other systems, really helps you to get a quick idea as to who somebody is without diving into their account. You can also create very specific audiences using those tags as well, right? So if I wanted to pull up all my for example, first-time buyers. I want to pull all my first-time buyers up in the system. I can easily do that through the filter. So maybe I want to send out some marketing material, maybe something's changing with respect to those first-time buyers, and we want to let them know. We would just select, if they have these tags, and if I go first-time buyer, just as an example, and apply and preview, we're going to see that there's now 22 leads in this system that have that tag. So you can have multiple tags where you're looking for specific audiences, but this is a great way to have a little bit more catered and targeted marketing to specific individuals. Or maybe you have, and you work in pre-construction, maybe you have the pre-con or new development tag, new project comes up, you can quickly find those people to blast them off the information that they may be looking for in there. Now, for those of you, there is some more that did hop on here. Again, this is our open Q&A. So any questions that you have with respect to your AgentLocator CRM system or your website, if you want to have questions about the website editor or any aspects in between, by all means, there is the chat below. There is the Q&A section. If you feel like your question is better asked vocally, then just raise your hand and I would be happy to give you the ability to speak in here. Okay. Now, one thing that you can also do with your tags is the automatic assignment of campaigns. So it just kind of eliminates one additional step for you if you've got some campaigns set up in the system. Now, where this can work, for example, and some of you may already have it, just depends on when you came on board. If you don't have it already in the system, there is a first-time buyer campaign. That is really just a series of emails, educational emails. In between, there is a couple text messages. The text messages are just referring back to the email to see if they had a chance or they were able to read that specific email and if they had any questions about it. So again, just trying to keep that communication going. So all of you do have campaigns in your AgentLocator CRM system, and some of them are being automatically applied to your leads based on how they're signing up on your site, right? There's a buyer one, a rental one, a seller one, and so on. Now, maybe you have your own individual campaign and that you've created or are going to create, and you want to make sure that the system is responsive to that campaign without you having to necessarily do anything. So we just want to add it to the lead based on a tag that we apply to the lead. So down where you have your campaigns, there's so many different campaigns. You'll always see when something is being auto-assigned. You'll see this little link right here. But let's pretend I wanted this campaign and I want this campaign applied to my leads automatically because it's something that is, maybe it's just an educational buyer's campaign that we want to apply to somebody that, let's say, indicates that they are 12 or more months out for making a purchase. It's really just a series of emails to keep ourselves top of mind and touching that lead every so often. There is actually an educational buyer campaign in your CRM system, just so you guys are aware. Now, if we click on the automatic assignment, this is where the triggers happen to trigger specific campaigns. So if we go here, we have two options for the trigger. We have only at registration and imports and always. So when we're selecting the only at registration and imports, this means at the time the lead enters your system, nothing afterwards, right? So that's what we're using currently for the new leads coming in that are putting them on these campaigns. Now, you can definitely do that if you have a specific campaign that you want triggered, for everyone that signs up on your website. You can definitely still do that. Now, you also have the always options. The always means like at registration and any time thereafter. And you basically set your rule as to what is going to trigger a specific campaign on a lead. So you can combine things. So let's say you have a team, for example, and maybe your team members they're all getting their own leads, but maybe they want to modify their campaigns that they're working with their leads, for example. So we can actually specify who the main agent is. So we can, we have to be clear if the main agent is, for example, AgentLocator training, that's the only time it's going to trigger. But you can give it a second rule. So they have to have, for example, this as the main agent on the lead, but maybe they need to have a specific tag as well. So the tag, it only triggers for that specific agent if they're doing that, right? So it's not going to work on other accounts. Now, we'd be happy to help you with all of this if you have set something up and you're trying to figure out how best to trigger it. In this case, I'm not worried about who the main agent is or what type of lead it is. Again, we can be very specific and stack these. But in this case, let's say I want this campaign to trigger on any lead, let's say that I put, let's just say not buying now, for example. They're not buying now. Okay, so anytime I put this tag on a lead, it would trigger this campaign. Again, some of you do have it for first-time buyers. It does trigger. And then all you're going to do is hit set. Okay, so this is how you would automatically sign after the lead has registered. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to open up the CRM again so that we have both windows open. I'm not having to go in again. Come on. There we go. And we're going to see how that is going to trigger for us. So I'm going to actually go into this lead right now, and I'm going to add the not buying tag, right? So I'm going to add this tag to the lead. Now, again, that tag is what triggers this campaign to essentially just automatically run on any lead. So if we go back here, and I'm just going to hit refresh, and it can take a couple seconds for it to actually apply to the lead. It's not always as instant as we sometimes want it to be. But there we have, we just got this one here. This is the one that we just assigned. It's a new buyer's welcome campaign, option 2. So if we go over here, there we are. So that one there, again, it triggered simply because we applied that one tag to the lead. Now, if we go and we expand it, you're able to see your campaigns. So just so you guys are aware, when you have your lead open, the e-campaigns, any campaigns that are currently on your lead are visible right here, or even if they're completed, you're still going to be able to see them, what campaigns have acted on leads. But you can see the actions of those campaigns as well. Now, we can force those individual actions to go out if we wanted to, for example. We also have that ability to stop these, but it does let you know when the next action is set to go out in the system. And we can, of course, also preview the email as well. So we're also able to do that and see what email that is scheduled to go out into the system. Any questions from those that are in here with respect to the campaigns and actioning them or anything along those lines? Campaigns, tags, website questionnaire, anything that's kind of been covered already. Is there any questions? So if you're wanting to dive a little bit deeper into that, you have a little bit better of understanding. But again, use the chat, use the Q&A, raise your hand if you feel like it's easier to speak. I'd be more than happy to answer those questions for you. Now, I'll just kind of continue into our campaign section because it is a lot of people tend to have questions surrounding campaigns. So I'm a firm believer that a campaign should never replace your individual efforts. It should complement whatever it is that you're doing. Campaigns can work for you in the background. And again, it really depends on how you manage and want to nurture your database ultimately at the end of the day. Now, we'll just close this out here. Now, when you guys are in your system, just one thing for just to point out is you do have this question mark at the top. When we click on that question mark, it is going to show you tutorials reflective of where you're currently positioned. Right? So right now, because I'm in the campaign section, these are videos essentially on campaigns. So how-tos and so on, differences of fixed date or I can't think of the words. I can't think of the words. So fixed date or I can't think of it. Doesn't really matter. It's just based on when the lead signs up. Now, in here, of course, you do have the ability. So your campaigns are going to look different than this. This is a training CRM. So there's some random ones in here that make no sense. Let's put it that way. But you do have the ability to edit campaigns. So if there's a campaign that's already in here, we have the ability to go in. We can edit that campaign. You can definitely edit those actions. So you have, the email that kind of goes out. You can edit this email. Just keep in mind that when you see anything in brackets, so this one here isn't really a short code, right? We would take this out. But for example, these ones here, these are all short codes. So they're automatically pulling information so that it's relevant to everyone that's receiving it. Now, as we scroll down in each action, you can also choose who that email comes from, right? So is it just a generic campaign and all the emails or actions are going out from the person that's assigned to it? Or perhaps this is, you have a multi-level team, maybe you have mortgage agents in here, various individuals. You can actually specify who that action actually comes from. So if it is an email, for example, from like the lender perspective, you can actually have that coming from the mortgage agent in the system. You also have the ability to stop your campaign. So the campaigns that are in there, that are being assigned to your leads already are being automatically stopped. Okay, so they do stop once we make contact with the lead. So you can rest assured that once you connect with them, and that pipeline again kind of goes back into logging your calls and making sure you're moving your leads through those pipelines, will automatically trigger this to stop. Now, in other, you can blanket a campaign, so the whole campaign has a stopping clause, doesn't matter. You can also have it so maybe the whole campaign doesn't have stopping clauses, but each individual action has its own stopping clause. So it's relative to various things if we want that communication to still go out. So for example, with this, with this one, surprise. So maybe with this one here, I want the campaign this email to not go out. Let's say if I have the tag, money on the person. So if the tag money on the person is on the person, it would actually not action this email. It would actually skip over it and go on to the next one, because I said, you know what? If they have this tag, I don't need this action to go out. Right. So one example is, let's say, a generic, I always kind of give it, generic buyer campaign. Maybe you have one email in there with respect to first-time buyers, or let's say it's one email in there with respect to the importance of gaining a pre-approval. Now, if somebody has the tag pre-approved on them, they don't need to know the importance of a pre-approval. They've already got that. They're well aware. So we can then skip over that action, but continue to run it if we utilize the tags in the system to tell it to do so. You can also do it so that it's just a pipeline. So for example, if you want the campaign to stop once you've set a meeting with somebody or once you've signed an agreement with them, ours are currently set so that any of these, because you can multi-select, just so you are aware, if it goes through any of these different from made contact downwards, it would automatically stop that campaign. So that's how these stopping clauses do work. Now, the delay period. So maybe you have a campaign like this, and maybe you want to stretch it out a little bit. You want it to go, act a little bit differently than what is currently set there. So here you have like 5 minutes, 1 minute, 1 day, 2 days, etc. So this is when you're building your campaign. You're telling the system, okay, here's this action. Then 1 day later, this action goes out. Then 2 days later, this action goes out. So right here we have this action going out 1 minute after this action. But maybe I want it to go out instead 1 day. I want this email to go out 1 day after the previous action. We can then update that and update anything on here. And we can see that this now is 1 day instead of 1 minute after this initial action in here. Now, as you've seen at the bottom as well, you do have silent hours. So silent hours are really great when we have an automatic assigned campaign, right? Because if it's automatically being assigned, for example, when the lead registers, leads register at all different times of day. So we may want to indicate that we don't want these actions. And again, you can do this on the entire campaign, and I'll show you. We don't want this action or this campaign to action between these hours. So you could set the hours from what time at night, for example, to what time in the morning is this campaign, silent. So if you do get a lead that registers at 3 o'clock in the morning, we're not sending, or you're not sending them text messages at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? So that's what the silent hours are. Now, as we go into the main level, as you see, you have a lot of these same type of settings that you can control. Now, these control the whole campaign, okay? So it doesn't matter even if you put individual stopping clauses in here, this is what's ruling the entire campaign, okay? You also can see here's the silent hours here. So from 7 o'clock at night to 6 a.m. as an example, I do not want this campaign to run. You also, again, on the main level, you can action your campaigns only on business days. So depending on what it is, if you don't want to spike up conversations on weekends, For example, you can have your campaigns only action on business days. Now, as we go and say, let's say if we want to action or add a new action in here. So let's say we're taking this campaign and we're making an edit. We want to add more actions to it. We're just going to hit the plus sign. Now, when we hit the plus sign, it gives you different actions that can happen. So do we want to send an email to this individual? Do we want to send an SMS? Do we want to assign this person to another campaign? Or do we want to associate a task with it? Now, in this example, I'm going to, I will do an email in here. So once we kind of have that set there, we can select. So you can most definitely write your email right from here. So if there's something in here and you want to put it, you do have these little pop-ups here, which is the short code. My screen is enlarged. The short code, you can just click on it, for example. Let's see if I make my screen a little bit smaller, if it does pop out. There, so we can see different ones here. So if we want, anything to do with this, this is all having to do with leads information, for example. In here, you can keep going. Really, the ones that you would use is their first name. Hi, first name. Often the signature, so your signature is something that's often used. Now, if you don't want to build out your email right here, you want to have it as a template instead. Then you can definitely do that, right? Then it's already there. You can send it in one-off scenarios as well. So if we select the template, then it's already here. So I'm just going to grab a random one and we're going to choose this one. Right? So it's already in here. Everything, again, we can edit this email. We're not stuck with how it is in here. We can definitely edit. We cannot do we won't be able to bold or anything like that. We don't have any of that ability, but we can definitely add the content or edit the content in here. And again, you're basically, once you're setting that up, you're kind of indicating, is there any special rules with surrounding this? And the delay period, right? So again, how long after this is rolling, this email went out, do I want this one to go out? So maybe I want this one to go out 1 week later, right? And then we can save it. Now, another thing, so it's just kind of here, we can see that action is now been added. Now, some of you may have campaigns that are being built, or you want to just almost like have it in a loop, just so that you built it out, and then once it kind of hits its end, we kind of just loop it right back to the beginning, depending on how long your campaign is, right? So that you can definitely do, because you can always assign this campaign to itself. Okay, or you can assign it to another. So in your systems, you'll notice that a lot of your leads, when you look at it, they're coming in, they've got the buyer campaign, and they've also got the HomeLocator campaign on them. That's because as part of that campaign, we also assign that HomeLocator, try to encourage them to use the app. But when we are doing the assigned campaign, again, you're just going to select the campaign. Now you can have a stopping clause. So if you don't want this, for example, this is a campaign that you want to loop back and back and back because maybe it's just educational, or maybe it's geared to try to get this lead to be responsive to you. So of course you want it to just keep looping until they come back. So we can select that campaign, the same one. I can't even remember what this was, the new seller, for example. So new seller, so we can see that. I can assign it back to itself. But let's say I want to put a stopping clause. I don't want to assign this campaign back to itself if, for example, I hit a certain pipeline. So maybe if I ended up setting a meeting with this person, I don't want it to loop. I wanted it to just do its one course for that certain circumstances. Then we can also do the delay period. So again, how long after this email would we want to assign this next campaign? Maybe we want it just, 1 day later, we can do 1 week. For example, we want to assign it to that new campaign in here. So that's one thing with those and editing existing campaigns. You can, of course, create campaigns right from scratch in here. You give it a campaign name. You cannot have any special characters, just as an FYI. And then you're choosing the relative date or the fixed date. Okay, so a relative date is relative to when the lead, when you assign the campaign. So all the actions, as we kind of were looking at with the other one, are all relative to the previous action. The fixed date campaign is when there's a fixed date for each action. So you're specifying what day that action goes out. Now, one great example for this could be a holiday campaign. So maybe you want to build out a campaign that automatically gets applied to all of your leads, let's say, but it's emails for all the holidays. So you don't have to remember with every lead. You want to keep yourself, wish them Happy Mother's Day or Valentine's Day or Easter, Christmas, any of the holidays. You can have it set so it automatically goes out by running a fixed date campaign. So that's essentially how you could do something like that. That's just my best example of a fixed date campaign, because we want to specify exact days. Again, we can also create stopping clauses in here. One of the other things that you can do, which saves you a lot of time sometimes, is the cloning of a campaign. So if you already have a campaign in your system and you want to, keep that existing campaign, but have an additional one that you want to just edit, maybe tweak and change some things around, you can clone the existing campaign and recreate it again, right? So you're not having to build that out right from scratch. So again, let's just do this one. I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, whatever, open house. I'm going to clone it. It's going to automatically create it as the name, 1, 2, whatever. It's the clone, and all the actions that were in that existing campaign are already here. Okay, so we have the SMS content and the email. This is actually an example when maybe you have somebody that comes in through an open house and they sign up. So you guys can also do it through landing page creator and so on. I do have a video tutorial on that. But if they sign up at that open house, let's say, but the open house is obviously changed, right? But instead of having to recreate the campaign every time, you can simply just clone that campaign and edit the actions to obviously reflect that property and that property essentially in there. And then of course you can then just change the title of it if you wish to. It is entirely up to you. You don't necessarily have to clone in a situation like this, because unless you're using, this is a short campaign, right? So unless you're going back to that open house, you can always use the same open house landing page and trigger, and you just change this campaign each time and kind of go from there. So that's a little bit of information for you guys with respect to campaigns. Was there any questions? I know you guys, this is an open Q&A, so we're supposed to be having some questions being asked in here. Again, if you want to put them in the chat, the Q&A section, if you feel like it's easier to verbally ask your question, by all means, raise your hand. I'd be happy to get you on and make it so that it's easier for you to communicate that. And I can promise you, those questions that are being asked do benefit others. I know that, we're all on here because we want to learn something, right? So ask your questions, ask away. But this is more or less kind of reviewing just some of the things today was, the tagging of your leads, the importance of that. That questionnaire. So kind of we go first into the website editor. We talked about that home locator and that link, right, that we can use to advertise, to generate new leads for ourselves. So it's a great tool to utilize for that purpose. Splatter that thing everywhere, get people on it, get yourself your own leads. Then, of course, we went and dove into the questionnaire, that little pop-up that essentially can pop up onto your website to ask specific questions, which then, of course, which led us into the tagging of our leads, right? So being able to identify leads through tag, creating different audiences and filters surrounding those tags, but also how we can use those tags to automatically assign or even stop a campaign that may be applied, or you want to apply to leads. You're only doing it through like one action, apply the tag, boom, campaign goes. And then we dove into the campaign section. We talked in here, with respect to how we can edit those campaigns, assign those campaigns, clone campaigns. and that sort of thing, creating new ones and so on. Now, I'm sure campaigns is a big one. A lot of people have questions. Generally, they want to learn a little bit more about campaigns because it's really something that you can take advantage of. Why not have the system, doing some work for you in the back end? It just helps you nurture those leads, whether it's just checking in, I had somebody last week that wanted to just create a campaign that was just check in on people. It's just the same. It's more or less the very same content that goes out and it loops. It's just like, hey, just want to make sure everything's okay. Just want to make sure everything's okay. But it goes out periodic, once a month. And so it's just to try to, again, get somebody's attention. So, and it works, right? Because they may not respond to one or the other, but they will, in many cases, they do respond to something. And that's just emails that are acting in the background. This individual does call his leads, so he's not replacing his manual efforts. He just has a secondary thing in there. So if he does drop the ball, there is something still there that's helping him in the back end. Now, Annie, just going to go into the home area again with respect to leads in here. Now, you guys do have a lot of filters in your system. The one that we created today, we didn't create one, we utilized, I should say, is using the tag filter. Again, you should all be getting leads that have tags on them automatically, right? So we often want to figure out how we can find or cluster these people for various things. When we do the tag, there is options. So I just want to explain these options to you guys so that you have a better and clearer understanding of what the different options are. So if we go, they have all the selected tags. So in this case, if I was selecting, let's say, these two tags, my leads have to have both of these tags. They can have additional tags as well, but they have to have these two. So let's see if there's actually anyone in here. So I do have actually 3 people in here that actually do have the first-time buyer and money tag. Right, so they all have those tags on them. They have additional tags as well, but they at least have those 2. Okay. Now, the other option is it does not have. So if I want to pull up everyone that does not have any of these tags, we can apply and preview, and it's 286. Okay, so they don't have any one of these tags. So it's either or. So they can't have either of these tags, basically. If we have any selected tags, that means they can have any, either or. You can have both of them, one of them. I have to have at least one of these tags, but I don't have to have both of them. Okay, so there's 24 in here that have at least one of these tags. We have only these selected tags. So if I have, let's say I'm trying to pull up somebody that only has these 2 tags, they don't have any additional tags on them, there's no one in here that has just those 2 tags. And then you have to has this tag, but does not have this tag. So maybe I'm looking for, a first-time buyer. I want to make sure they have a first-time buyer, but does not have the tag that says that they've been pre-approved, for example. So they have this tag, but don't have this tag. I want to apply that. I can see that there's 11 people in here that they have the first-time buyer. None of them have the pre-approved tag on them. Okay, so this one here needs pre-approval, saving for down payment, right? So again, it allows you through tags to create those very different and find people based on using those. Now, when you are creating tags, so I'll just kind of briefly go over that here. When you have your tags in the system, you can search through here. You have your most used tags based on how you're using the system. And if you're on a lead, it'll kind of pull up which ones do I have assigned to the lead. Now, in the tags, what you'll notice is they all have letters and colons beside them, and they're color coded. We do this to help keep it organized for you, because if you were to see some other, people that don't do this, but prior to us setting this up, there is so many duplicate tags because we word things a little bit differently, and they're all over the place. So here it just helps keep them a little bit organized for you and easy to find, so you're not searching and digging for it. But it's broken into different categories in here, right? So at any time we can edit these. So if you wanted to edit this tag to change what it says, because maybe you refer to it as a lender locked bad credit, you refer to it as something else, right? But same idea, you want to just change what it says, you have that ability to do so. You also then, of course, have that ability to add a tag in here. So when you're adding a tag in here, it's simple as to click on the Add New Tag button. You can give it a name, and then you can also give it a color as well, right? So associating a specific color with a different category, for example. Now, as you add a tag, it will automatically apply it to your lead. So it'll automatically say, okay, she just created this tag. She probably wants it applied to the lead. If you don't want it applied to your lead, you just unselect it there. Okay. And then you would just go done, and that would there be added to our lead. So if we go on to this one, you can see now that this one has the name tag. Now, again, with the organization of those tags, and just kind of a little rule of recommendation is tags should be generic, right? We don't want to create a tag that can only be applied to a very specific situation that is probably only going to be applicable to one of the leads in your system. Keep them generic, whatever it might be, the best you can. And then again, to keep them organized is to put a letter or two in front with a colon. So that category of things, specific category, then they're all grouped together, so that they're all grouped together. They're all the same color. This is the color for my investors type tag, right? So maybe people that are looking for pre-construction, but you have the pre-con condos, pre-con, freeholds or freehold, or towns, whatever it is, right? So you can cluster your different categories together by adding those letters. They are in alphabetical order as well. So that's why when you're looking at here, they're always kind of grouped like that. Alrighty, kind of going through that. So those are your tags, and using your tags in the system, again, it does allow you to create those very specific audiences for yourself, catered. And your marketing efforts, or perhaps if you're reaching out to somebody, we can all, when we're using our own internal scripts, we're kind of calling a list of people where they have the same or similar situations. So your script is relatively the same for all those people that you're calling as well. So you don't have to put too much thought process into what you're doing. Now, when you do have the tags in here, we can also, of course, stack items as well. So whether we're using this one, we can add and add and add filters to really create a very specific audience for ourselves. Now, when we select our tags, there's so many different tags that you can do in here. One of the things that some people aren't aware of this here is pulling leads or filtering leads based on where they're buying a home in like with how their search is set up, right? So if we go to search criteria, you can see there's different options. So if we go buying, we have the buying city, the buying home type, buying price, and also the buying time frame. The buying time frame is relevant to and reflective of you adding that data in the system. But these three here are all reflective of how their searches are like their saved searches in the back end. So if we wanted to, so when you do buying, you can do any, and you would just start typing. So if I wanted everyone that's in the buying of Toronto, this is an example. Then if we wanted to do the buying home type, just go buying home type. You have any, you can again multi-select. It's looking for a town, like I'm just saying, like maybe I'm looking for somebody that's I know, or an audience that is looking in Toronto for townhouses. We have that in here, and I'm just going to eliminate this one here. I'm going to see with all of these if there is actually a lead in here that follows that criteria. So there's one lead in here that's a first-time buyer but hasn't been pre-approved, is looking for a property in Toronto of a townhouse, or a townhouse property in Toronto. So there's one lead in here. If I was to open up this lead, we'd be able to see that with respect to the search. When we go in, we can see that that's Toronto. When we go and edit it, we're also able to see that the search criteria here is indicating that they are looking for a townhouse. Now, of course, as you can see here, there's tons of other criteria, but they match those two, qualifying aspects with respect to the filter. Now, when you are using the filters, maybe you don't care if it's Toronto. You're going to just unselect that and apply here. What that does is now we have two people. So I kind of just eliminated this as being a requirement just by unselecting it. So if I wanted to see something a little bit differently, we can unselect the certain aspects so that, and this is good for doing stats and things like that, where we're applying and seeing the difference as we're applying different filters and so on. So this one here, kind of as reviewed, is great for running open houses. If you wanted to pull up so we can blast those people that we know are looking for a townhouse in Toronto because you have a townhouse that you're showing, you're having that open house for this weekend. It's definitely that's one, just one example of how that could be used. It could also be that you got a new listing coming up, right? We want to, blast to everyone that we feel would actually have some level of interest in this property, because people do take and leads often, not all of them. Some people are just kind of passive. A lot of people like to just showcase everything they're listing so that the buyers or the leads in their system can see that you're proactive and a working agent. But some people take these emails as if you just sent it directly to them. They'll be like, and they'll say to you, well, why would you send me this? I'm looking for a condo in Mississauga. Why are you sending me a listing for a townhouse in Toronto? So some people will be like that, not all of them. But that's where this allows you to kind of take and segregate your database to be able to send them the listings or information, or invite them to various things based on various attributes of the system. And again, the data is being collected for you just by them being on websites, the logging information. So there is, again, like as I said, a lot of different ways that we can filter the leads and stack them, right? So what I highly suggest you all do is in your system, if you do have, these leads in your system, what have you, go through each one if you have time and just kind of see what they are, see what what that filter does. It can also give you just a little bit of an idea or creative thinking of how you might be able to use that information to your advantage. Right. So you can definitely look at people from when they register. Or of course, if we're trying to find people that came from a specific campaign, that's your source. We want to pull up everyone we know that's receiving listings or is not receiving listings so that we can say, okay, we got this list of people that we added to our system. Maybe, a long while ago, we got busy. We want to pull up all those people now that we want to start sending listings to. So we're going to pull them up and reach out to them. So again, there's a lot of different ways that we can utilize this data and these filters for yourself that allow you to really, zone in and be creative with your database in there. Now, one of the things, and I'm going to say this is probably just before we wrap up, and as we're kind of looking at this, is the custom field. So, we tag our leads. So this kind of falls into that whole tagging and categorizing our leads based on different aspects. So you do have custom fields, right? So you can create your own fields. So this also goes now at import as well. So if our system doesn't have a certain placeholder that you're looking for to add information on your leads, you can create that down in the custom field section. So down here at the bottom, you do have this custom fields area. When we go to it, we're going to be able to see that we have the ability to have, custom dates in here. So custom fields. Now, once you add a custom field in here, it's just automatically on all your leads. So there's never a custom field that's just applicable for one lead. Once you add it in here, it's going to be on all the leads moving forward. Now, when you go to add that custom field, you can give it a name. You can tell a system, what kind of custom field is this? Is this just text where the data just goes in there? Do we want a date picker? Is a number required? Or is it drop down kind of list where you select from the list kind of thing? So I'm just going to go text in this case, and I'm going to say, I'm just going to add pre-approved, but it could be really whatever you want it to be in here. So now we can see that the pre-approved in here, and then we would type, for example, yes. We want everyone that has yes. So you can use your filters as this as well. So this is just a great way. These are just some examples of adding additional data in your system that may need to, you may want to be aware of. Maybe you're a big, family type agent and you run events for families and you want to pull up all the people that have, kids, right? So you'd be able to do so. You can add kids, like their names, what have you, throw them in there. Often, this is just an example, but often those are going to be in your notes section, probably somewhere closer to the top. But you do have that ability to edit through this information, again, through the filters. So one thing about the filters is once we go back, they're all kind of still here. And then if we go to the custom field, so I just go custom field and then go down. Instead of scrolling all the way down to find it sometimes, we can now see the pre-approved, right? So if we want to have it like or equals, and then if we want to go like, yes. So just in case we use punctuation a little bit differently, we can apply a preview. There should only be one lead here now that has that custom field of pre-approved that we just added. That also falls into all of this other requirements that we set. But we did just add that. So regardless if we had this criteria or not, there's still only one person that has that custom field on them. So that is just another creative way that you guys can help with yourself, is to add different information that you utilize as an individual agent to pull up databases or keep track of various things about your leads or clients or past clients in the system. So creating those custom fields, using the filters to create those audiences. Again, go in there, play with them, like see what they do, see what happens, and stack them if you want to. If you need help, if there is a specific filter or target audience that you're trying to create and you just can't figure it out, just reach out to support. They often will send it my way in there, and we can jump on a call training session really to dig down what it is that you're trying to achieve with those filters and in your system to create those different audiences. So but that is it for today. If you guys again have any questions with respect to anything that you learned today, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, we will be back next Monday. So do have your questions as you're working through the system. 100%. If you're going to do, just jot it down. That way, when we're on next time, you guys will have them all lined up, and it'll be very focused on your guys' needs. So that's what this webinar is for. It is for you guys to get those questions answered. Again, it can be with respect to your CRM system. It could be with respect to your website, your site manager. It could even be, what's happening with your leads that are kind of happening and kind of figuring through. I do have the ability as well, if you guys wanted to, as you're in here, is diving into various CRMs. I can blur out all the data and give it's sometimes people seeing the real live, walkthrough of, using the data that's in a system that's, current relevant data and utilizing various aspects in here. So, but I do thank you all for hopping on today. Any questions, as mentioned, please do reach out, and we'll see you all next week.